the exception of the family, we will ask you to please stand. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? When the wicked, even mine enemies and my foes, came upon me to eat of my flesh, they stumbled and fell. Though a host should encamp against me, my heart shall not fear. Though war should be against me, in this I will be confident. One thing I have desired of the Lord, that I will seek after, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the Lord and to inquire in his temple. For in the time of trouble he shall hide me in his pavilion. In the secret of his tabernacle shall he hide me. He shall set me upon a rock. And now shall my head be lifted above mine enemies round about me. Therefore I will offer in this tabernacle sacrifices of joy. I will sing, yea, I will sing praises to the Lord. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we're so grateful for this moment, and we appreciate the work that you do in our lives. And even when it's difficult and it seems impossible, you give us strength to make it through to another day. We've come to celebrate the life and the legacy of someone who was bigger than life. And we pray that you will allow us to have this celebration in a way that will be honorable to you and respectful to his wishes. We thank you, we praise you, we honor you. We do this now in Jesus' name. Amen. You may take your seats. My name is Julian Dangerfield. I'm privileged to serve as the senior pastor of this church. And I want to take this moment to invite you into this space called Heritage Fellowship Church. Just in the way of a little bit of humor, I'll be looking for you all on Sunday. Today, we really want to celebrate Gerry's life. Some may wonder, what does this have to do with Heritage Fellowship Church? Well, he loved to come to this church. And he sat about 6 rows back there all the time, just loving our music and soaking it all in. In a Gerry kind of way, he just swam in Heritage Fellowship Church. And we equally loved him. So how do you say goodbye to someone who was bigger than life? Well, you honor the respects that they ask. It was Gerry's preference that we do this within 45 minutes. I told Smitty that's a flag on the play. What we're going to do today, and many of you have the order of service as written in the program, we will go sequentially through the service. We will honor and respect this man's life. But as Smitty and I agreed that Gerry would have had to give us a little bit of room because you all have come to celebrate him. I said you all have come to celebrate him. So we're going to make it 46 minutes. We're going to go sequentially through the printed program as you have in your hands. And so I have done the welcome here, and I will say that following this, we're going to have our first reading, and that first reading will come from the Honorable Supervisor, Mr. Jim Wilkershaw, followed by a musical selection by Miss Kim Gordon, who is present. We will ask the honorable supervisor to please come to this podium, followed by the musical selection, and I will come thereafter.
Well, good morning. You know, there are some people who prefer a small, understated funeral, and I can tell you all, Gerry Connolly was not one of those people. So he is very happy that you all are here today. Before I share a reading, I want to take just a moment to acknowledge all of the Team Kaine staff and interns and volunteers who are with us today and watching at home. His impact and his accomplishments are also your impact and your accomplishments, and he loved each of you and was so proud of you. Gerry's family chose this reading not only because it's one of the most powerful stories in the Scripture, but because it reflects something essential about the way Gerry lived his life. He saw every person, first and foremost, as a human being, deserving of dignity, compassion, and care, regardless of their background, status, or the labels society might assign them. And the parable of the Good Samaritan reminds us that being a neighbor is not about proximity, similarity, or convenience. It's about seeing one another with compassion and choosing to act with mercy. Gerry embodied that spirit in ways big and small, through public service, private kindness that I know he showed at some point to everyone in this room, and a fierce insistence on recognizing the shared humanity in us all. A reading from the Gospel according to Luke chapter 10, verses 29 through 37. But because he wished to justify himself, he said to Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" Jesus replied, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he fell into the hands of robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So too a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he was moved with compassion. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own animal, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 silver coins and gave them to the innkeeper. 'Take care of him,' he said, 'and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have.' Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers?" The legal scholar replied, "The one who showed him mercy." And Jesus said to him, "Go and do likewise."
Wow. Wish I could sing like that. Maybe I can give up this pulpit then. We want to appreciate the supervisor and Minister Kim Gordon for the selection on Eagle's Wings. The Good Samaritan is a perfect passage of Scripture for Gerry. Gerry Connolly, the Good Samaritan, on Eagle's Wings. That's a great connection, Smitty. I'm not sure if you did that, but that was wonderful. We're going to move on just by having the early life of Gerry. Paul's going to come, followed by a second reading, and then another musical selection by Kim Gordon, in that order. You're welcome.
Smitty, Kathy, Caitlin and Mark, Rose and Philip, Senator Kaine, elected officials, distinguished colleagues, relatives and friends of Gerry Connolly, and of course, his able staff, as James said, whom Gerry loved so much and who served him so well. I am here today honored and humbled to remember the life of my closest friend of the last 60 years, Gerry Connolly. Kathy has lost her dear husband and co-adventurer of life. Caitlin has lost her dad and hero. Rose and Philip have lost their beloved brother. And members of Congress and state and local officials who are here with us today have lost a cherished colleague, and all of us here have lost a real friend. And thank you, Pastor Dangerfield, for hosting us in this magnificent church, which, as you said, Gerry knew and loved so much. Our country and the Washington metropolitan area as well has lost an indefatigable, ingenious, and determined public advocate for the needs of so many otherwise underserved. You know, much has been written and spoken these last days, as indeed it should be, about the extraordinary accomplishments that Gerry, as a public figure in local and national government, is responsible for. And these indelible marks that he has left are obviously his legacy, and it cannot be overstated. But the ordinary marks that he leaves on the lives of so many of us whom he has touched and who have been fortunate enough to know him personally in many ways are even more extraordinary and enduring. The red thread that runs throughout Gerry's 75 years, short 75 years, is to those of us who have known him best quite apparent, because what made Gerry tick, what kept the spring in his step, that sly smile on his face, that tireless, passionate advocate on behalf of so many, was a commitment to purpose and principle that is regrettably less apparent these days of rancor and division. Oh, Gerry was a fighter. Make no mistake, we've seen that quintessential Irish ire on many occasions. He was a fighter until the very end. But Gerry did not fight out of gratuitous belligerence. Rather, he was prepared to fight the right fight, even against seemingly insurmountable odds, to achieve what many considered impossible for the benefit of the many. But his fierce determination was always driven by that purpose and principle. Though at the same time, Gerry was a pragmatist as well, choosing to fight the right fight because, of course, it was just and necessary, but he was also always well prepared. And that allowed him to prevail more than most, which is why he was named the most effective lawmaker of the U.S. House of Representatives by the Center for Effective Lawmaking, with a legislative effectiveness score 7 times higher than that of the average member of the House. No offense to the other members of Congress, to be sure. As Gerry's close friend Mike Schwartz reminded me, there's a quote by Teddy Roosevelt that Gerry always carried in his wallet. And it pretty much sums up how he approached his mission in everything he did throughout his life. And it goes like this: "It is not the critic who counts. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring gallantly. So this place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat." My path first intersected with Gerry many years ago when we were in high school together, studying to be priests at the Catholic Foreign Mission Society of America, better known as the Maryknoll Fathers. I was 1 year ahead of Gerry, and he came in from his hometown of West Roxbury, Massachusetts, as a high school junior, something in those days we might have called a delayed vocation. And though he left the seminary 7 years later, he never stopped pursuing his vocation, his calling to service, to deliver on the needs of the people he loved, surely his family and friends and colleagues, and the people he served many years of local and national public service. He acted out of purpose and principle with passion, determination, intelligence, empathy, and always, as we all know in this room, disarming good humor. And it is Gerry's purpose which goes forward in the many lives of those he touched. It didn't take long for Gerry to be known and loved in the seminary community. He always seemed to attract a group of people around him who wanted to be around his wit and insight across a broad swath of issues that interested him. And it will come as no surprise to most of you that Gerry was not only an honor student, but he was also a member of the debate team, the drama club, and the literary club, and of course, student government. In fact, Gerry's first foray into elected office was when he was elected as a junior in high school to be president of the student government of the seminary. And then again, subsequently, he was elected to student government in the seminary college he graduated from in Glen Ellen, Illinois. But you know, Gerry didn't confine himself to the four walls of the seminary. He was also very involved in the surrounding community, helping organize walks for development to raise money to alleviate hunger at home and abroad, as he could often be seen on the front lines of protest against the war in Vietnam, or advocating for civil rights, or actually working in a local orphanage. That same drive and determination to win, which made Gerry such a formidable public figure, was even on early display throughout his career. And you all know from the program, because you've seen it, that Gerry had a long and illustrious career before he entered public life. But he was also a voracious reader, and one could see him in the seminary often reading a book, which was fortunate because most of his peers were engaged in athletic activities, which Gerry, it really wasn't his cup of tea. We could also see Gerry in the recreation room of the seminary decades ago, often until the wee hours of the morning, where he engaged in a fierce game of risk or pinochle, wowing his peers with his willingness to take risk, as well as his incredible recall ability, mastering the rules of the game, and cleverly assessing the behavior of his opponents to use to his advantage. Now, who hasn't seen that throughout the course of his public life? After leaving the seminary, as you know from the program, Gerry worked for the American Freedom from, first he worked for the Heifer Project in Little Rock, Arkansas, which was focused on eradicating poverty and hunger, before he then moved to Washington and worked for the American Freedom from Hunger Foundation in 1972, where he met his wife, Kathy, and they both helped to actively organize grassroots campaigns to address the needs of the poor and the hungry. And he also served as executive director of the U.S. Committee for Refugees, now the U.S. Committee for Refugees and Immigrants. And then in 1979, he crossed over into public life, working for the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations, supporting the man I was working for at that time, then Senator Joe Biden. Gerry's first foray into elective office, public office, came in 1995 when he was elected to the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors, which he went on to chair in 2003, achieving great things for the county, the region, and the Commonwealth, of which all of us assembled here are very well aware of. And then, of course, Gerry went on to be elected in 2008 to the U.S. House of Representatives, serving the people of this congressional district, Virginia's 11th, for 16 years. Everything Gerry did in each of these many roles was quintessential Gerry, following that calling, that red thread running throughout his whole life of purpose and principle, pursuing it with every skill set and urge of energy that he could muster to try and make the world a better place. Now, we all have so many rich stories of the life and times of Gerry Connolly. One of my favorite late life stories was recently, after an adverse reaction to chemotherapy, Gerry was hospitalized. And it happened to have been the same time that Caitlin and Mark were planning to host their engagement party at Gerry and Kathy's house, and the house was filled with guests. So Gerry, of course, appealed to the hospital to allow him to be discharged. And they said, hell no, you cannot go. Excuse me, Pastor. So what do you think Gerry did? He cajoled his way into the hospital store somehow, in his hospital garb, and had a car outside the hospital waiting to spirit him away to his home, where he quickly changed costumes, right, Kathy? And was there wowing his guests with his wit, determination, and charm, celebrating that momentous occasion. So this is another illustration of how Gerry would get things done, no matter how seemingly insurmountable the odds were. He simply would not take no for an answer. And throughout his life, until the end, he did everything with that same zeal, tenacity, and ingenuity. The zeal of someone on a mission, pursuing his calling, his vocation, driven by purpose and principle. I believe the words of St. Paul late in his ministry was, as it was coming to an end and his life was coming to an end, echo Gerry's vocation well. In his letter counseling Timothy, Paul no doubt said things that I think Gerry would believe are a good admonition to all of us. And St. Paul's words went like this: preach the word, be prepared in season and out of season, correct, rebuke, and encourage, with great patience and careful instruction. For the time will come when people will not put up with sound doctrine. Instead, to suit their own desires, they will gather around them a great number of teachers to say what their itching ears want to hear. They will turn their ears away from the truth and turn to myths. But you, Paul advised, keep your head in all situations, endure hardship, do the work of an evangelist, discharge all the duties of your ministry. And he goes on to say, the time for my departure is near. I have fought the good faith, I have finished the race, I have kept the faith. Gerry, thank you for enriching our lives, for fighting the good fight, for finishing the race, for keeping the faith. we will carry on in your memory and the extraordinary lifelong journey that you've been on. We'll miss you. We'll miss your passionate leadership. We'll miss your wisdom. We'll miss your infectious laugh and your incredible sense of humor. But we will honor your memory by picking up the mantle from you, continuing to fight the good fight out of purpose and principle. Thank you.
Well, as Gerry would say, you nailed it, Paul. This follows beautifully. With a degree in literature and a lifelong passion for reading great literary works and epic poetry, it is no surprise that the Cura Troy by Irish poet, professor, and Nobel laureate Seamus Heaney was one of Gerry's favorite poems. This poem appears in Heaney's translation of the Sophocles play Philoctetes, which Heaney wrote in 1990 with the troubles in Northern Ireland and apartheid in South Africa heavy on his mind. On the way to the Trojan War, Philoctetes, a Greek archer, is wounded and abandoned by his fellow soldiers. By divine intervention, he is warned against reprisal and revenge. He experiences internal breakthrough and becomes convinced that working for the greater good can bring about a sea change of justice. The Cure at Troy. Human beings suffer. They torture one another. They get hurt and they get hard. No poem, play, or song can fully right a wrong inflicted and endured. The innocent in jails beat their bars together. A hunger striker's father stands in the graveyard dumb. The police widow in veils faints at the funeral home. History says, don't hope on this side of the grave. But then, once in a lifetime, the longed-for tidal wave of justice can rise up, and hope and history rhyme. So hope for a great sea change on the far side of revenge. Believe that a farther shore is reachable from here. Believe in miracles and cures and healing wells. Call miracle self-healing, the utter self-revealing double take of feeling. If there's fire on the mountain or lightning and storm, and God speaks from the sky, that means someone is hearing the outcry and the birth cry of a new life at its term. It means once in a lifetime that justice can rise up and hope and history rhyme.
That is ridiculous. Thank you, Kim, for that selection. We thank Paul for giving us a reflection and some insight into Gerry's early life, and Pam for the second reading that she did. Just before I invite Senator Kaine, I would just like to take a liberty and ask every public servant to please stand. Let's appreciate them for their service. Let's appreciate them for their service. Please remain standing just for a moment. Please remain standing just for a moment. If by chance you're standing and you are Republican, let me say thank you. All seriousness. Thank you for recognizing that this is bigger than partisan politics. We equally thank you for your service to our nation and to our communities. You may take your seats. Now I will invite someone that most of us know. It is our wonderful senator hailing from the great state of Virginia. Senator Tim Kaine will come now, followed by a silent remembrance. We will read the obituary silently, and then we will have a musical selection thereafter. Senator Kaine, you're welcome.
Good morning, church. You know, we think of going to church as going to a building, but the word church actually means us. It means a group of believers, and we are joined as believers today in public service and honoring a tremendous man and public servant. I can't tell you how honored, Pastor, and humbled I am to stand before you at Smitty and Caitlin's request. I want to thank Heritage for hosting and you for being such a generous host, but when Smitty and Caitlin asked me, of all people, to offer some words about Gerry Connolly, the public servant, I thought, well, today I'm in the middle of my family vacation in Virginia Beach, and normally going to my wife Ann and asking for dispensation during the family beach week would be tough, but I knew I had no fear, and Ann would send me from Virginia Beach here this morning with her blessings and with her strong love and support for the family. And I joined so many others. I heard about the numbers that attended the visitation last night, and I know we have a full sanctuary and others watching online. So many hearts joined together with this family today. Gerry and I began our time as Virginia elected officials almost in the same moment, more than 30 years ago. I was sworn into Richmond City Council in July 1994, and Gerry began his tenure on the Fairfax Board of Supervisors in March 1995. But the ties between us go back much farther, and I suspect that is why the family asked me to offer these words. Smitty told me that Gerry and I were like twins separated at birth. We are both deeply Irish. We are both deeply Catholic. We are both missionary adjacent. You've heard how Gerry trained to be a Maryknoll missionary before embarking on a career working for international NGOs and then the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and beyond. I served with Jesuit missionaries in Honduras in the 1980s before embarking on a civil rights career. We're both devoted to the German theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer, and we bonded over that very early when we got to know one another, and his pivotal work, The Cost of Discipleship. And we are both transplants to Virginia. Now, I was able to hide it better. Gerry's accent made it impossible for him to ever pass as a Virginian. We connected as local officials and have partnered on projects ever since. From the decades-long battle with many in this room to extend the Silver Line from Tyson's Corner to Dulles and beyond, the single hardest project I have ever worked on in my entire life, to post-9/11 security challenges, to campaigning together for races from school board to president of the United States. We have been through thick and thin together. And Gerry has not only served his community and the Commonwealth and the nation, he has given me critical advice at very critical times in my own life. I would not have been governor without Gerry and Smitty's support. And I'm not sure I would have run for a third term in the Senate last year had Gerry not sought me out, hearing I was thinking about what to do, and insisted that I could not make a decision until I listened to him. He gave me a very brotherly lecture in late 2022, and I know this church is filled with people who Gerry has mentored and advised in a similar way. Gerry was fiercely loyal to his friends. The loyalty was not unconditional agreement. Oh, no. If he disagreed with you, you would know it. And his attitude was a wise one. A true friendship can bear loving disagreement, and any relationship that can't isn't a true friendship. Gerry succeeded at the local and national level because of a mantra that he used: mission, passion, metrics. Mission, passion, metrics. You first need a sense of mission. What is the big goal we are trying to accomplish together with others? Gerry was a mission-driven leader, not a self-driven leader. Then you need true passion to achieve your goals, your mission. As a wise man once said, you can't cook with cold grease. Gerry had a fiery desire to succeed. And finally, you need to hold yourself accountable for results. Good intentions aren't enough. You need to define with real metrics what success looks like and be honest in measuring your efforts against those metrics. But you know, with Gerry, it wasn't just what he did, it was his own style in doing it. Tough. You wouldn't want to be on the receiving end of a Gerry Connolly cross-examination. But also very funny and able to laugh not only at others, but laugh at himself in a very endearing way. Gerry's laugh could fill up any room. Yet Gerry could go quiet in a microsecond to narrow his focus to one person in any room who really needed his full attention. I was on a Senate trip last week to Ottawa, Canada. It's weird that you have to do a peacekeeping mission to Canada these days. And I was with 5 bipartisan colleagues. All had interacted with Gerry either when they had served in the House before coming to the Senate or on NATO matters. And Thursday night, when the business of the day was done, we just regaled each other with all kinds of great Gerry Connolly stories. His sense of style, the stupid jokes he told at his annual St. Patrick's Day party, in the super exaggerated Irish brogue that he would affect. Or how about his love for parades and his willingness to wear the most garish and gaudy flag-covered apparel and take joy in doing it? Gerry had a style that was just, here I am, world, accept me for who I am. I'm going to just be me. For all Gerry's service in Congress and even in the international realm with his NATO work and his NGO work, Gerry always remained a local elected official at heart. That's really who Gerry was. He was so proud of his role in helping create a Fairfax that was economically dynamic and socially welcoming. He loved solving problems at the local level, what Catholic theology would call subsidiarity. that issues should be solved at the level closest to those affected. He was grateful that fellow elected officials elected him to be the president of the Virginia Association of Counties, the chairman of the Northern Virginia Transportation Commission, the Washington Metro Council of Governments, the Northern Virginia Regional Commission. He always battled for the District of Columbia. Without full representation in Congress, he viewed that as a responsibility. He battled for the entire Washington Metro region. His advocacy for federal employees consumed Gerry to the day that he died because they were his neighbors. And in the sense that term is meant in the reading we heard earlier, Gerry was a good neighbor. I went back to our intellectual crush, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, when I was asked to speak today. I don't know if you're like me. I like books, but I have too many of them. So once a year, and particularly when I'm moving, I try to throw out or give away as many as I can. I read Bonhoeffer's The Cost of Discipleship when I was 25 years old. That's 42 years ago. I suspect I have moved about 10 times since then. And I give away the books to charities and the Richmond Library, but I get to that one. Now I'm going to keep it. I haven't cracked the book open in 42 years, but it meant so much to me when I read it that every time, no, I'm keeping that one. I'm keeping that one. Gerry and I bonded over this. If you don't know about Bonhoeffer, Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a devout German theologian who immediately saw in the early 1930s, after he'd had a pivotal experience coming to Union Theological Seminary and worshiping at Abyssinian Baptist Church in Harlem, the early 1930s, he went back to Germany. He saw that Hitler and National Socialism would destroy Germany and would even destroy Christianity itself unless people of goodwill firmly and publicly resisted. He warned his countrymen, listen to this, if you board the wrong train, it is no use running along a corridor in the opposite direction. He refused his friend's efforts to encourage him to leave Germany and instead stayed to train ministers to stand up against Hitler. He was imprisoned for 2 years and executed by the SS at the end of the war, calmly knowing that his death would bring him freedom and union with God. Most people know Bonhoeffer for this really interesting idea he had, the old Christian debate about whether you're justified by your faith or your works. Is your faith, is your salvation a gift from God, or can you earn it through your works? And he came up with a really novel way to solve that problem, pitting the notion of cheap grace against costly grace. That's what he's most known. But when I pulled that book out and started reading it again, I realized there's so much more to him. Why did I keep that book? It was because somewhere in the universe, someone knew that I would be standing here today. And I would pull it out and read it after 42 years to think about my friend. He has so much good advice for us, Dietrich Bonhoeffer. The value of listening, the need for continuous gratitude, the responsibility to act. Listen to this. We are not to simply bandage the wounds of victims beneath the wheels of injustice. We must drive a spike into the wheel itself. He knew we make ourselves too busy and said a person always has to be ready to be interrupted by God. He posed a tough question about human nature. Why do we value the worthless and devalue the precious? And he had a test for society. The ultimate test for a moral society is the kind of world it leaves to its children. I had forgotten that Bonhoeffer also talks about grief and the grief we experience when we lose someone that we love. Here's what he says. There's nothing that can replace the absence of someone dear to us, and one should not even attempt to do so. One must simply hold out and endure it. At first, this sounds very hard, but at the same time, it also offers a great comfort. For to the extent that emptiness remains truly unfilled, we remain connected to the other person through it. It is wrong to say that God fills the emptiness. God in no way fills it, but leaves it precisely unfilled, and thus helps us preserve, even in pain, the authentic relationship. Furthermore, the more beautiful and full the remembrances, the more difficult the separation. But gratitude transforms the torment of memory into silent joy. One bears what was lovely in the past, not as a thorn, but as a precious gift deep within a hidden treasure of which one can always be certain. Gerry's loss creates an emptiness for all of us, but for none so much as Gerry's wife and daughter and family. I was asked by a reporter a few days after Gerry died about the process to find his replacement. I said, Gerry won't have a replacement. He will have a successor, and likely a very worthy successor, but he won't have a replacement. We cannot replace Gerry in our lives and hearts, but we're blessed to carry what was lovely about him as a precious gift, a hidden treasure of which we can always be certain. And we can also act. We can honor Gerry by acting boldly as he would in a time and in a world that so needs our passionate, mission-driven service. God bless Gerry. God bless this family. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kaine, for those insightful comments. And might I say that admonition and reflection from Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who most of us know well, who study theology and celebrate his life. And although living and had a prolific ministry in the 1930s, he still influences us today. We'll take a moment to silently read the obituary. And remember Gerry's life.
In all the old familiar places that this heart of mine embraces all day through. In that small cafe, the park across the way, the children's carousel, the chestnut trees, the wishing well. I'll be seeing you in every lovely summer summer's day. In everything that's light and gay, I'll always think of you that way. I'll find you in the morning sun, and when the night is new, I'll be looking at the moon, but I'll be seeing you. I'll be seeing you in every lovely summer's day, in everything that's light and gay. I'll always think of you that way. I'll find you in the morning sun, and when the night is new, I'll be looking at the moon, but I'll be seeing you.
We wish to thank everyone who participated in today's service and celebrating his life and his legacy. I would just invite you to please stand. Will you join me in just appreciating God for Gerry Connolly? We will prepare to process out. In just a moment, I will ask the undertakers to please come forward. I will do just a blessing and a dismissal. I will go out, followed by the family, and then successive rows thereafter, so that we can get out in an orderly fashion. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to thee. The Lord lift up his countenance upon thee and give you peace. God, we thank you today for this man's life, his legacy, and his impact. And we pray for his wife, his daughter, and family. God, not only that you will give them strength, but I'm asking you to be their strength. And for the many colleagues who loved his smile and his work, may you give them the wisdom to move forward into our next as a nation. Thank you for this time that we have had, and we pray that you have been pleased and honored by our gathering. We thank you now, praying this in Jesus' name. Amen.
When
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures, restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me.
Good to see you. How are you?
Doing well. Good to
Great.
see you.
Yeah, Great.
Thank you very much.
Wildly out of bounds.
Why, we have a criterion, and that's it. Out of bounds is fine. Wildly is unacceptable for
No,
us.
delighted to be here with you all.
We're glad
Well,
to
thank
have
you very
too.
much for taking the time to be with us, Attorney General. We really appreciate it. So you had an opportunity to be sitting at the Supreme Court there for the birthright citizenship arguments, which turned into a lot of about these nationwide injunction things. But tell us what you thought, what it was like.
First of all, it was amazing, and I had been there mostly as a tourist, right? Even before law school, you go to an institution like that, you take it all in. So to be back there representing Massachusetts, and I always say it's an honor and privilege to be the AG of Massachusetts. I never take that for granted. But sitting, representing our state and Commonwealth in this birthright case, which is a significant one before these justices, I'm still processing the blessing of it, to be candid. And in this particular moment when everything is on the line in terms of the rule of law and protecting our Constitution, I think the birthright case is such a powerful case to continue to lift up as to why people should care. Not just care about the issue, which is this idea that birthright, if you were born in this country, on American soil, you are a citizen of this country. But the targeting of babies and unborn babies to try to advance some immigration policy is absolutely concerning. It has to do with the 14th Amendment. So if a president thinks that he can dismantle the 14th Amendment or Constitution with the stroke of a pen or a Sharpie, which he cannot do, then he can come for any other amendment. So pick your favorite, the first, the second, or anything else. So we were down there defending the 14th Amendment, unborn babies, but most importantly, the Constitution. And what I actually left the court feeling was not only how historic and what a blessing it was to be there, I actually appreciated the thoughtfulness of every single justice, including those we deemed to be the most conservative justices who were pushing the Department of Justice on this question of whether or not the relief we have won in this case that says the president does not have the power to dismantle birthright citizenship, that relief is afforded to everyone across the country. So we were there on that narrow issue, and everyone asked thoughtful questions of the administration, and they didn't have really good answers, and sometimes actually talked in circles. And I appreciated the thoughtfulness of this court, who I think cares deeply about the rule of law and recognizes if we don't have the rule of law of the Constitution, then this country is something else. We're moving towards fascism, and most importantly, you don't have economy or functioning economy without a Constitution.
We should say you're a plaintiff. The Massachusetts is a plaintiff in the case. You weren't just there as
we were there with New
observer.
Jersey, right? New Jersey. Let me mention the other states: New Jersey,
please.
Washington, California. He got stuck on a plane. I don't know what happened there, but there's a coalition of Democratic AGs standing up for this.
We don't care about the other states. But,
I know, I know, which is okay, because I love Massachusetts and we're the best state.
But I want to challenge something you said that was actually quite moving. You know, if we don't have the rule of law, well, we don't have the rule of law. We discussed this with Doris Kearns Goodwin. We only said it 1,000 times, so our apologies. Let's just pick one case, as we're going to talk to you about ICE in a second here, Attorney General. The Supreme Court said facilitate the return of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Trump then says to the reporter, Terry Moran for ABC, yep, I could get him back. He says, I can. And they've done absolutely nothing, as far as the court knows, nothing to comply with a court order. And nothing has happened to them for violating, I would argue, the rule of law from the Supreme Court of the United States. So aren't we in a situation that even if the courts do what you consider to be the right thing, there's a very good chance that it won't mean anything in terms of the president's behavior?
So I'll say a couple of things. I don't think just because this president is operating unlawfully and has a pattern of behavior of taking unlawful actions and also not being responsive to all of the orders coming from the courts, that does away with the rule of law. We do have a rule of law in this country. What we have is a president who does not think the rule of law is applicable to him. And so what we're seeing as AGs, and it's not, and not to be political here, but I have to because it's the facts. It's only Democratic AGs across the country standing up for the rule of law and pushing back on this president when he takes unlawful actions that undermine it or look to dismantle that rule of law in this Constitution in this country. And so on the birthright case, for example, you have someone attempting to use an executive order to do away with the Constitution. And we're saying you do not have that power. The Constitution doesn't give it to you. Presidents do have power. Immigration is a big area of federal authority, along with engaging with wars, pardon power. So we're in court consistently protecting the rule of law, but it's a reminder to folks that we are heading in a dangerous direction because our tools within an AG's office are very limited in holding an administration accountable. When we get to a point where folks in this country think, because of their power position, that they are bigger than the law, that they're no longer president, they're a king, then that is out of our realm. That is then now the question for people and for voters, for example. How civically engaged are you? Did you vote? Did you encourage other people to vote? At some point, you have to ask yourself that question too, which of course is beyond the reach of our tools. But I tell my constituents in Massachusetts all the time, I will do everything in my power using the tools that I have to protect our residents here, protect the Constitution, and protect our economy.
We're going to get to your calls in just a minute, by the way.
But you know what I wonder, Attorney General Campbell, why doesn't one of these judges hold these people in the Trump administration in contempt of court? I mean, because they're just, especially with Abrego Garcia, who's been in prison for all this time against what the Supreme Court said. Shouldn't that happen?
I think the courts need to maximize their tools in this moment in time, and maybe even at times take a few risks, because why the hell not?
Yeah.
And why I say that is, in our office, when we were filing our NIH lawsuits, we filed the first one to protect the critical funding, billions of dollars in biomedical research, clinical trials, life-saving treatment that the president attempted to wipe out on a Friday night. We ran into court to say you cannot do that. This is clinical trials for pediatric cancer, for example. This is resources that protect our economy because of our healthcare institutions here and biomedical innovation. And we won that case, and then we went into court the second time on NIH 2 because they were playing games, canceling grant meetings, but still having the same impact. And some AGs didn't join our case like they did NIH 1 because they weren't willing to take that risk. And I said, well, actually, we're pushing the law a little bit, but I actually think we have strong arguments here based on the action of this administration to try to cut funding on NIH. So we're taking some risk and we're pushing the envelope. Everyone needs to do that in this moment in time in response to the unprecedented actions we're seeing from this administration.
So but haven't they canceled a lot of this funding? It's gone, a lot of the NIH funding.
In the context of so many of our federal funding lawsuits, we are actually winning. The faucets of funding have not turned off.
They have not turned off.
They have not. And actually, in our NIH cases, we have, in our first one in particular, the money is continuing to flow. We turned it back on. That being said, I do operate in reality. And the reality is, when they made that decision on a Friday night to cancel funding, that then affects clinical trials, for example. So you had some folks across the country literally driving hours to go to a clinical trial only to learn that it was canceled. And of course, we then are in court to try to get the courts to keep up, to maintain access to those trials. But if you know anything about clinical trials, for example, you miss one, it's not like you can make up that clinical trial to then get back on your care that you hope will save your loved one's life. So these decisions by the federal government are certainly having an impact, not only creating fear in community, costing potentially lives of our constituents, absolutely undermining our economy, and maybe even moving us toward a recession. That reality is real, but this is why I show up in the office every day as AG to do my part to fight back against what we're seeing.
Okay, so we had a bunch of questions about ICE's presence in the state, but our first caller has a ICE-related question. So let's start with her, and then we'll do follow-up. Melanie from Newburyport, you're on with the Attorney General, Andrea Joy Campbell. Hey there, Melanie. How are you?
Hi, thank you. Thank you for taking my call.
Thank you.
My question is about Massachusetts laws governing the practice of ICE and DHS officers being unmasked and unbadged and driving unmarked vehicles. Mm-hmm. I think it puts all of us at risk for abuse and escalation, even our own law enforcement. Our law enforcement don't wear masks. They have badges. They even have name badges. And FBI agents typically don't wear masks during raids. So I'm just wondering if it's legal here and could it be banned?
Great question, Melanie.
It's a great question. And I actually appreciate, Melanie, your frame, because what we're seeing from ICE enforcement right now in Massachusetts is creating fear and not advancing public safety. And it's not just ICE officials. Now you have other non-ICE federal agencies, FBI and other agencies, showing up to do aggressive enforcement here in Massachusetts, in stark contrast of our law enforcement. So I have a state police division within my own office where we are out there taking on all types of cases to remove drugs off the street, guns off the street. We do it in such a way that we not only follow the law, but they make themselves, if they're not undercover, obviously, known to the public, and they do it with the highest of exceptionalism and integrity. We're not seeing that. And so a couple of points on this. Where we are fighting back, one is for due process, and Rumesa's story is a good one.
Ozturk from
intimately, I talked to her recently.
Oh, you did?
She's incredible. She is absolutely incredible, given what happened to her, but in addition, that she still has legal proceedings ahead of her. The grace that she has, the spirit she has is remarkable. But we were involved in that early on. Did not mince my words, and in a statement I put out, just immediately saying this is unacceptable. And frankly, now there will be more incidents. We probably can't even keep up if we were to put a statement out. So we're taking action to protect due process, supporting her lawyers. We're also making sure if something horrific happens to someone, that lawyers are available for these folks, immigration lawyers. And frankly, a call to action right now, we need more lawyers to step up. In addition, when we show up on the 14th Amendment issue, it's obviously protecting unborn babies and babies in this immigration enforcement effort by the administration. But what I want folks to know is while we will do our part, it's still very hard to hold the federal administration and ICE officials accountable for the activity we are currently seeing in Massachusetts. They are patrolling our streets. They are at times unmasked. They do not necessarily identify themselves, which makes our jobs in the AG's office, but also law enforcement, harder. Why? The authority of the federal government when it comes to crafting immigration policy and implementing it is extremely strong. It is unprecedented, actually, for a state to hold ICE accountable for actions that they are doing while advancing, from their perspective, immigration policy and immigration efforts. It has to be something so egregious, possibly. That being said, it's not off the table for us to hold ICE accountable, but let me tell you, it is absolutely ridiculously hard to be able to do that given the authority they have, the supremacy clause in this country, and the significant authority ICE has, including being able to engage and pick someone up off the street without a warrant.
That's what I want to ask you about.
Yeah.
So
on
that point,
yeah.
we're outside the warrant. What I am doing, and I'm pushing my team, where we hope to have someone make something by the end of this week, early next week, is we've put out a lot of guidance to institutions about how to protect the privacy of folks, their information, but also if ICE shows up at a healthcare facility, we've put out guidance, find it on our website, Mass AGO, guidance to institutions on how to engage with ICE. The thing we need to do now is put out information to the public on what they should expect or not expect from when ICE is patrolling our communities, what is lawful and what isn't, because they will be shocked to see the significant authority that ICE has, including patrolling our communities based on this concerted effort by the federal administration, which we know is doing nothing whatsoever to advance public safety, but creating fear and putting people into hiding, including the very people we sometimes depend upon to actually take cases on, to advance cases in order to protect folks in our communities.
Yeah, one more question on this, then we'll get back to your calls. We're talking to the Attorney General, obviously. It seems to me, and there may be exceptions to this, that what we as a society and government does is when an abomination is perpetrated by Tom Homan or his people, we respond to it, whether it's Ozturk or Khalil or mass deportation. But there's almost no preemptive legal strategy. And let me suggest one, if I may. Marjorie and I were laboring on under a misconception about warrants. We have said on the air, and we were wrong apparently, that if you want to grab someone out of their house, you need a warrant from a judge. If you want to grab someone off the street, you don't need a warrant. Well, it turns out we're wrong, and you know this, we didn't know this. Under the Immigration and Naturalization Act, you need an administrative warrant, meaning given by a federal agency, not a judge, even if you want to grab somebody off the street, unless you can make a case that they're likely to escape before you get the warrant. Well, my understanding is they never have an administrative warrant. So why aren't we able to, almost never, why aren't we able to get in court and get some injunctive relief that mandates in advance that if there's no administrative warrant and they can't make a showing that that person was likely to escape, that they've committed a wrongful act and should be held accountable by court. Do you understand my question?
I absolutely understand your question,
So
and I
what's the
absolutely
answer?
agree with you. We can't always just be reactive.
Exactly.
We have to be proactive. I agree with you. But what I want folks to understand, including listeners, the federal authorities when it comes to immigration enforcement, is the scale is stacked against us. So say we do that, we go in and say administrative warrant, which they don't always have to have. They could say, well, they will go back. Based on even what we're seeing now, they don't give a damn about administrative warrant. They don't care. What we're seeing from the posture of folks showing up in our community right now, they don't care. And guess what? Even if we were to hold them accountable post getting that order, you get an administrative warrant. We go back into court to say, well, this ICE agent didn't have one. Good luck. Good luck trying to hold them accountable, not just because of the supremacy clause, but also because, well, to your point, they were trying to escape. They were doing X, Y, and Z. And then it gets even worse for us as a state to try to continue to think about holding them accountable. It's not off the table, and I'm not saying it is.
But you seem to
I'm not saying it is. But
you seem to be saying, as your Attorney General, please, I know you'll correct me if I'm wrong, I care deeply about you. I'm going to do my damnedest to protect you. But the reality is, based upon the state of the law, I can't do much up front except educate you as to what your rights are.
So right now, the question that is in our communities that I welcome is how the hell do we hold ICE accountable for what we're seeing on our streets?
What's
whether
the answer?
in Worcester
What's the
or
answer?
other places.
How do we hold them accountable?
It is very difficult to hold them accountable. Why is that? Because the federal authority and laws that give them such power, they have tremendous power to enforce immigration law. So you almost have to see something so egregious to possibly hold ICE accountable. And why is this? Even for principles like qualified immunity. I was going and doing it in the line of my official capacity. It might be easier to hold ICE accountable if they, for example, I'm sitting at a bar having a beer, because why not? Every once in a while you need one, especially in this time. I digress. But, I'm sitting there catching up with constituents. An ICE official comes in off duty and then starts to do something, harassing folks, doing something outside of their official duty. That's a lot easier to hold them accountable. It's much more difficult. So this is where I say we will do our part, but other people can do their part. Law enforcement, local law enforcement, has discretion. I was pleased to hear the Worcester chief say, we're not pursuing any charges against that young person.
A 16-year-old.
Looking at the totality of what happened and saying, I feel bad for that person. Yes, right? Discretion, we can use that. At the same time, I can put out this guidance because guess what? To your point, people go out thinking people not only have to have a warrant, but that they have to engage a certain way. Sorry, that's just not the case. And I think that information is critical because it then defines for all of us, given what we're seeing, what our expectation is and just how hard it is in the immigration context. And so when I say we're going to do our part maximally, we will. But we also engage with judges and courts all the time. We see what they're prone to support on and what they're not. You just saw the Supreme Court in this Venezuelan TPS or
temporary protected status.
TPS status case. The Supreme Court did not have to insert itself at all in that question. It was working its way through the courts. The lower court in California made a decision. The appeals court made one. The Trump administration didn't like it. They went to the Supreme Court. Then you have the Supreme Court inserting itself in ways it didn't. So you don't even know where you're going to get from the courts. But let me tell you, at least based on the history of precedent, the Constitution in this country, it gives significant power to the president. And that's when people need to wake up. Because at the end of the day, my last point on this, he's there because people voted for him to be there, whether we like it or not. And so the question becomes for those who don't like what they're seeing in their community right now, did you vote? Did you encourage others not to vote? And do you realize now that who's in a White House matters? He could, for example, working with us to bring down pricing or working with Walmart to bring down pricing for goods. But he's not doing that. Instead, we're seeing this aggressive posture on immigration. So I just have to leave people with that point because I think it's important. Because it doesn't just put it all on one AG. It puts on all of us to say there's a part we can play in determining what we're seeing in our community.
But just one thing that I'm confused about before we leave this. The Supreme Court is upholding due process. They've not said we can do away with due process. So isn't that an area where when people are hauled off, like Ramesa Ostark hauled off the street, without due process, they've said you can't do that.
And we're fighting for due process. My office, have filed briefings in support of due process and the administration following due process in other cases involving immigration, even in court with a lawsuit to protect status of TPS, et cetera. We're doing our part. But this is what the Supreme Court did, not fully doing their part. They said, return the gentleman, but didn't give him any instructions. They could have, but they didn't because they're playing cute, right? They could have said, bring this gentleman back today via plane, been really specific. But you have some folks playing politics, including on our Supreme Court. I can't discount that, even though I thought they were thoughtful in the birthright case. You still see the political leanings of certain justices showing up, or even no explanation as to why they're making decisions. The court can do more, and it should do more. I can't control that. So the question that we all have is, what can each of us do? To your point, you even educating folks right now using this platform on what ICE can and can't do. So we're going to do what we can, but even then, I don't like to just do things knowing we'll get an outcome that is a temporary fix and solution to the problems we're seeing. I'm thinking outside the box, and I need some time, given what we're seeing from ICE, and figuring out how we can reply within the confines of the law.
Let's go to Kevin in Lowell. You've been very patient. You're next on with the Attorney General. Hi, Kevin.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. Thank you, Attorney General.
Thank you, Kevin.
Nice to speak with you. I'm enrolled in the social equity program, and I've been involved in cannabis advocacy going back.
He's involved in the social equity program of continue for a second. Let's hear if the Attorney General can hear you. If not, we'll put you on hold and get back to you after the break to see if we can have a better connection. Continue, Kevin.
Sure. I'm enrolled in the Cannabis Control Commission social equity program.
Okay.
And I've also been involved in advocacy for going back to the medical program. I know that the CCC has a number of issues they need to work through, but I'm really concerned about discussions about potentially removing the independence of the CCC and moving it under a constitutional officer, especially given how the rollout of the medical marijuana program went back when it was under the governor. I was curious if you support preserving the independence of the Cannabis Control Commission.
Kevin, thanks for the call.
Thank you, Kevin, for the call. Well, right now we're in the weeds here, and I'm not going to sugarcoat that there's some reforms that need to be done, and we've been advocating with my joint appointment authorities and others in the legislature on ways to improve this commission. And frankly, even folks who are participating in that social equity program who came to us with concerns around some notice issues on the program that we were able to work with team members on to cure, to provide, make sure there was more transparency. So it's not a question I can answer by myself. I think I'm engaging with a lot of stakeholders who have different thoughts and opinions. But one thing we have to do is get them the staff they need, get them the human capital they need, so that they can deliver to folks. And so, Kevin, if you actually want to stay on and engage a little bit more, because we have been in the weeds on this as a policy question, we're happy to actually get more from you and go from there.
Kevin, don't hang up. A producer will get your contact info and give it to the Attorney General. Before we take a break, can we do some good news?
That would be nice.
We trash the legislature
I would love some good
all
news.
the time. They did the right thing. I know where you were on this. This eviction legislation. Awesome. We talked with Andrew Cabral about this years ago. Governor Patrick did something with Corey records, criminal records, to ensure that these don't follow people for the rest of their lives. What happened on the eviction front, if you can?
So right now, you can get your eviction record sealed in Massachusetts. And I got to give a shout out to Senator Literate Edwards, who played a critical role on this, Rep. Moran as well, all of the advocates. And so in this state, sadly, and I'll just give one example for the sake of time, as soon as an eviction is filed against you, you have an eviction record. Even if you win that case later, you still have it on your record. So we saw the impact of folks trying to build their wealth, get into housing, because of a flawed, inaccurate record. So now you can petition the court, go through a process that we want to make as easy as possible to have that sealed. And so many organizations are involved. We continue to put our information on our website, too, to help folks. So if anyone thinks they're interested or need this process, reach out to us.
Well, let me just say one thing before we take the break. It's not just people who are not at fault and wrongly sued.
Absolutely.
Even if you're found to be at fault, there are rules in place. There's a longer waiting period so you can have it expunged as long as you don't do the same thing again. So there's a lot of protection for people. And they should. Is it on your website?
So you can go on Mass AGO, yes. There's also, and I'll get this after the break.
Okay.
A sealing like actual website, which I will
let's
get.
Do that.
So I'll get that for after the break for people to go to walk through that process.
Great. You have the website on the eviction thing.
Yes. And how do you forget this? Sealmyeviction.org.
Sealmyeviction.org.
Yeah, right to the point.
So great legal information out there, and folks can follow with them, but of course our office as well.
Even if you lost your case, check out that website.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You know, we get this question all the time. Since you're the Attorney General, law enforcement person here running the whole show in the Commonwealth, we'll ask you. There's a lot of misunderstanding about whether...
Now that I'm no longer in the weeds.
That's right.
In the weeds on the Cannabis Commission.
That's right. About the constitutional rights that people have who are non-citizens. Mm-hmm. Tell us about what they're entitled to.
Well,
people think they're entitled to nothing, basically.
No, that's not true. Yeah. That's just That's not true, and every state is different in certain expansion of rights, whether it's free tuition or certain things that we're affording folks. But they're trying to use this sort of argument in the 14th Amendment case, saying, well, they're here not, I put this in quotes, subject to the jurisdiction of us. And we say that is total nonsense. They are subject to the jurisdiction of us, and that's been around for over 150 years. You're here in Massachusetts, you still have to follow the laws, et cetera, which we were actually seeing from immigrants, including those that are undocumented, who are going to work, who are paying taxes. And so even the false narrative that suggests they are not is ridiculous. And then those who are committing crimes, our office does criminal liability.
Right.
So whether you are a citizen or not, if you are perpetuating crime in Massachusetts, we hold you accountable. And that may mean you are deported if you're not here lawfully. That may mean if you're a citizen here, you are incarcerated. We are doing that every day while not creating fear in our communities, which is in stark contrast of what we're seeing from ICE in the federal administration.
But like a Marisa Osterk would have, she could
They have
express
free speech rights. They have due process rights.
Exactly. Free speech,
Absolutely.
due process, all
and if
those
she committed
things.
a crime, we'd be picking her up and holding her accountable
So
for
she's
that.
entitled to write
That's
her
right.
piece supporting Gazans and people in Palestine in this war without being deported. Okay.
Let's go to Mike in Jamaica Plain. You're on with the Attorney General, Andrea Campbell. Hi.
Hello, yes, thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
I did have a comment, a quick question just based on what the Attorney General just said. What right do we have to defend ourselves if someone tries to seize us on the street without a badge? But my comment was about the audit and Governor Healy and the recent immigration fiasco, where she was blaming immigrants for lack of resources, when we now know, thanks to the audit, that she was misspending millions of dollars. So we need an audit. We voted for it. The time has come. As far as I'm concerned, she's as corrupt as Trump is, and we just don't know.
By the way, the audit that you're talking about has nothing to do with question one. It was about shelter contracts
and I would say
that sort of thing.
That's a question for the governor on that audit. I haven't even seen it fully. It just came out. That's a question for the governor.
How about the ability
and I
to
think
protect...
the governor is going to be on here at some point.
She is.
I
She's
think
always
corrupt
here.
as Trump may have been a little of extreme.
Well, that's for he's entitled to say what he wants. How about his first question? What right do you have to protect yourself or to act if I assume he meant if an ICE agent comes after you?
And it's difficult. That's why people, rightfully so, including myself, are so angry by what we're seeing in our communities. Yeah. And this idea that they are saying we are here, putting out press releases included, saying we're promoting public safety. They are not. They're promoting fear and lawlessness and jeopardizing even what Melanie said, I'm going back to her name, the law enforcement that are trying to do the right thing here, even though they can't. They're not ICE, right? Trying to also, of course, protect people. Very difficult what they're doing in our communities right now.
Okay, so what Mike conflated was the audit that came out today, or yesterday, I guess, and a topic I know you love discussing with us, which we discuss every month.
Auditor.
Well, here's where I am confused. We asked the auditor to release her correspondence with you, and she said it was an attorney-client privilege, and we said to her, well, you can waive the attorney-client privilege since you're it. She did. She sent us 150 pages of stuff. You keep saying to us, I need to know what she wants to audit. Is that not what you say until I know that?
That's one thing.
Okay, well, let me tell you. Here's her letter to your office on February 27th. The title is, What's the Scope of the Audit that the OSA intends to perform? The scope of the OSA's current audit of the General Court legislature.
No. First of all, when is it? The date of that?
February 27th.
Of this year?
Yeah.
Is that the last correspondence
I don't know if
from
it's the last
our office to her office?
I don't know what it is. Well, no, it's from her. It's from your office, right? And this is about.
No, not the. Is it the last?
She is okay. Forget that. Okay, here's what I want to say. She has laid out, according to our reading of the 150 pages, specific areas that she wants to audit. Not what she might audit in the future, but what she wants to audit now. Here's my question that I still don't understand. Why can't you make a determination based upon what she says she wants to audit now is either constitutional or not? And if you rule that it's constitutional in the future, if she goes too far, you can rule that request is unconstitutional and she's not entitled to it.
That's not a ruling we make. So we actually put out correspondence, I included, and others, I think, added additional commentary outside of the AGO, before the ballot question on whether or not she had the authority to audit the legislature. We made it clear then she does not, if she, as envisioned then, was going to take that audit into certain places. You do not. And we made it also clear, yes, you can proceed with a ballot question, but the challenge with the ballot question is it does not require a constitutional analysis before you put it to voters, which is ridiculous. It makes no sense. You're asking people to vote and you haven't decided whether it's constitutional or not. Now she wants us to go into court and to defend her against the legislature, saying that the audit she wants to do is constitutional.
Yeah.
I cannot bring myself into court to do that if we do not know the fullest scope of the audit she wants to perform.
So the fullest scope meaning that she ever may want to audit?
Absolutely.
Why?
Because there are certain places that are unconstitutional, and until she says, for example, I agree with you, this is unconstitutional, this is unconstitutional, the court's going to ask the same question.
Okay, so let me, one more question on this.
I have to add one more thing, because we have put out correspondence too. And if you look at our last correspondence, because it does not always mean that you're getting a full picture, because in addition to the correspondence, we have met with her team over and over and over again.
Okay.
And my last point on this, and why I say last is because the last I checked, the biggest question I'm getting right now is on ICE, not the audit.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say that in a way that discounts the ballot. I want to enforce
72% of the people, including you,
I agree, but that was
voted
before ICE was patrolling our streets.
Well, you can do two
right?
things at
Absolutely.
once, right? Okay.
But I'm just saying that I've said the same thing on this radio show.
Okay, I want to clarify one thing. I'm sorry. This is really important. I want to make sure that you agree with this. If you thought that any audit by the auditor of the legislature was unconstitutional, you could make that decision now. You don't need to see the details. But it seems to me
some audits are constitutional and some are not.
Some are.
And we've made that clear to the auditor. We made it before the ballot question.
So why don't you just tell her what she's allowed to audit under the Constitution and what she can't?
Because guess what? I'm not the auditor. When I represent every state agency in this state, that's my job. They come to me and say, I would like you to represent me, including the governor or anyone else, to represent me in a matter. I then ask them the questions the court would say. Great, thank you. What relief, for example, are you asking from the court?
You're basically,
let me finish, Jim.
Sorry.
What relief are you asking from the court? What decision do you want? What law do you want us to enforce?
Okay.
We ask tough questions. We do not represent everyone all the time. And the same is true here. I can't put myself in her shoes. She has every right, given the authority of her office, to say, I want to audit the legislature. Great. Depending on the scope of that audit, it can be constitutional or not.
So you don't want to know the scope now. You're saying, and then we'll move on, you're saying I need to know the potential full scope that she may ever audit before I make a determination. Is that what you're saying?
Because the court will ask, what's the scope?
Okay,
and
I just
so
want to understand it.
I'll end with this. The last correspondence we sent was just that, in a very loving way. I don't want to suggest just because me and you are going back and forth that it's like, no, it's not personal. It's not personal. It is, this is what the court would ask us when we go in. And, for example, if in our conversations with the team and the auditor in correspondence, it is different. On the one hand, you're saying, I want to audit this, and then it's something else or something else. We need a full picture of that so when we go into court. And we've made that clear from the very beginning.
Susan from Dorchester, you're on with the Attorney General. Welcome.
Susan from where?
Dorchester.
Oh, wonderful. Hi, Susan.
Hi, how are you? Thank you so much for returning my call.
Thank you.
Returning your call.
Returning your call. You called us.
I love that. And I love that you're from Dorchester. Go ahead, Susan. Go. Go, Susan, go.
I love being from Dorchester. My question is this. We filed a complaint with your office a few months ago regarding Sunrun Solar.
Oh, yes.
And I haven't heard back from your office. We're having a lot of problems with Sunrun. They put us into a collection agency saying that we owe $5,800. We've been in touch with them, and we have not heard anything back. We've been asking for an itemized account of the money that we owe, and we haven't heard anything from them.
Before Susan, before she answers,
if there's any other kind of recourse that we could have
don't go away.
Regarding Sunrun.
Sunrun, by the way, is a solar company, and in addition to what the Attorney General says, we had Jen McKim on a couple of weeks ago, did brilliant reporting here at GBH on the nightmare that is Sunrun for some. So Attorney General, go. Oh, and don't hang up, Susan. We're going to get your contact info.
So yes, Susan.